Thank you very much for asking me to talk to you today, and I hope one day we'll be able to meet in person. When I took up my mandate last May, I identified environmental human rights defenders as a priority because defenders working on environmental rights often face serious threats and attacks. My new report on the killings of human rights defenders, which I presented to the Human Rights Council earlier this month, opens with the example of environmental rights defender Fikile Ntshangase, who was shot dead in her home in South Africa on the evening of the 22nd of October 2020. 3 gunmen fired 6 shots and she died at the scene. She was 65 years old and had been involved in a dispute over the extension of an open cast mining operation into a neighbouring nature reserve. Her lawyer told me Mama Fikile had received threats by phone in the middle of the night in June 2019, and she had reported them to the local police. A few months before she was killed, she got more threats. Sadly, what happened to her is not uncommon. According to information gathered by OHCHR and supplemented by other credible sources, at least 281 human rights defenders were killed in 2019. Since 2015, more than 1,323 human rights defenders have been killed in 64 countries, almost a third of all UN member states. 1 in 2 victims of killings recorded in 2019 by OHCHR had been working with communities around issues of land, environment, impacts of business activities, poverty and rights of Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendants and other minorities. Frontline defenders noted that at least 331 human rights defenders were killed in 2020 and that 69% of those were working on land, environmental or Indigenous peoples' rights. Global Witness recorded the killings of 212 land and environmental defenders in 2019 and also reported that 2019 was the most dangerous year on record for environmental human rights defenders, with Colombia and the Philippines recording half of all killings of environmentalists. Whether defenders are working towards SDG Goal 13 on climate action or SDG Goal 16 towards peace, justice and building strong institutions, we've seen a growing recognition that environmental defenders face specific risks and that protection of environmental human rights defenders, including Indigenous peoples, leaders and defenders, is closely linked to the protection of their communities and peoples. This protection can only be fully achieved in the context of a holistic approach that includes the strengthening of democratic institutions, the fight against impunity, a reduction in economic inequality, and equal access to justice. One of my report's recommendations is that business and international financial institutions acknowledge that land and environmental defenders and those defending Indigenous peoples' rights are at specific risk. States and business have responsibilities to protect, and too often they fail to live up to them. In the end, it is a matter of finding the political will to do the right thing. There are some signs of progress. Some companies are recognizing that defenders working on environmental issues are especially vulnerable. Last year, Del Monte Pacific Limited stated that they would not tolerate threats, harassment, or attacks against human rights and environmental defenders. The coming into force of the Escazú Agreement in Latin America and the Caribbean is also an important step. It's the first binding instrument that includes specific provisions for the protection and promotion of environmental human rights defenders, and it obliges states to guarantee an enabling environment for the work of human rights defenders working on environmental issues. And we hope more state parties will ratify the agreement. As ever, what matters most is the implementation of the agreement, more than a recognition that environmental defenders face specific risks. More than states agreeing that they have obligations to protect those defending the environment. Without it, hundreds more environmental human rights defenders are likely to be killed in the coming years in Asia and across the world. The harassment, jailing and killing of human rights defenders is not inevitable. Put simply, it can be stopped. But for that to happen, states must find the political will to end the impunity for those targeting defenders. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you today. I wish you well with your conference and I hope we meet soon. Thank you. Bye.